Very special thanks once again to Taunton Jaguar for providing the vehicle in this review, alongside of course my review of the Jaguar F-Pace. They are twinned with a Land Rover dealership as well, so if you are in the market for a relatively new or even brand new Jag, or potentially even Land Rover, click the link down below and check out what they've got. As far as this particular review goes, I'm actually going to jump straight into two reasons in particular why I like the Jaguar F-Pace so much, and why, to specifically allude to that thumbnail, I believe it's such a good value vehicle. There are two reasons, as I said. One of them we're going to get to a little bit later on, and it's not necessarily quite as obvious, you might need to bear with me. The first one though is very obvious to me at least, and it's actually one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why I wanted to drive and review this car in the first place. And that first reason actually has a lot to do with the market that this car is in. The SUV category. Some would say an oversaturated market at this point. I happen to love SUVs. I drive one, in fact, especially high performance ones. And in terms of this car, let's call it that for the sake of simplicity, one of the reasons why I loved it so much is because of the way it's designed. Now, some people would say that the visual design, the appearance, doesn't really matter that much, but to me I actually think it's pretty important, because I don't just mean the way it looks. I mean exterior design, interior design, road presence, but also practicality on a daily basis, and the kind of vibe that a car gives off. Now, you'll have noticed that a lot of what I just said is very, very subjective, and that's kind of the point. So a lot of people aren't going to necessarily agree with all of my sentiments, but the thoughts that I have on it are, I believe that the F-Pace does an excellent job of offering exactly what you would want from an SUV, and from a Jaguar in general, but with none of the downsides that many SUVs fall into. In fact, my number one hot take on this SUV is that I believe it may well be one of, if not the best looking all-round SUV on the market at the moment. And I even include stuff like the Lamborghini Urus, the Bentley Bentayga, the Rolls-Royce, etc. within that category. In fact, there are only maybe two SUVs which immediately come to mind for me, which I believe are maybe as good looking as this, possibly even a little bit more, and they would be something like the Cadillac Escalade in the American market, which you don't really see that much of in the UK, and on the UK market, and I believe in the States as well, the Maserati Levante. That kind of brings me to the key point that I have there. If you can liken a Jaguar which when brand new was 40 grand, and in the case of this car you can now buy around a 2016, 2017 shape with between 20 and say up to 70,000 miles at most on the clock for the mid to high 20 grand region, if you can liken that to a Maserati or a Bentley, and even have it in the same ballpark as those in terms of appearance alone, well, that's a pretty good start. At the same time though, I believe that the Jaguar is actually no way near as over the top and nowhere near as ostentatious as it easily could have been. Jaguar could have easily overstepped the mark and made it a ridiculous SUV. They didn't. They chose to make it something which ties directly into my second point as to why I believe it's such a good SUV platform. And that's the key word, platform. Most manufacturers, not just high-end, but even low-end as well, and I use the term low-end loosely, of course, I'm talking more affordable stuff that has really no connection to performance, and I'm sure you can think of some SUVs on that end of the spectrum. They tend to fall into one of those two camps for the most part. The ones that are higher end tend to focus on the higher end. The Bentaygas, the Uruses, even something like a Porsche Cayenne, there's really no such thing as a cheap Porsche Cayenne, not a new one anyway. Then on the other end you've got maybe some Peugeot SUVs, Citroen SUVs, maybe even lower than that in terms of price, and they don't really tend to even try and enter the higher performance segment at all. The great thing about what Jaguar did, and this is my key point, that second point in particular, is this is the SUV equivalent, for Jaguar at least, to my thoughts on the Porsche 911s that I reviewed, and some other cars as well. Even something like a Ford Focus is another perfect example. If you want to make a vehicle that not only sells well, but sells well in multiple markets and appeals to multiple types of buyer, a true success, you need to make the platform of the car good. Because if you make the essential underlying theme of the car good, then you can make it a more affordable version, you can make a higher performance version, you can have multiple variants that appeal to people who would otherwise never have any connection with each other. Something like a Lamborghini Urus will never be on the options list of somebody on a 40 grand budget, likewise the other way around. Whereas this Jaguar is something that could genuinely be on the, say, financing or used car or even new car shortlist for a family with a budget. But it could also be on the shortlist of somebody who wants a 550 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds super SUV. Because, just like that Porsche 911, just like the Ford Focus and a number of others as well, in the SUV category and beyond, it has so much variation. Consider this one for example, the 2-litre 180 horsepower model that I'm driving. It's certainly not the quickest thing around. These kind of models, be it the checkered flag special editions, normal ones, R Sports, you're looking at a 0 to 60 time of about 8.5, 9 seconds, something like that. So it's not that quick. The payoff though, the amazing payoff in fact, is that this full-size 5-seater SUV, and we're going to talk about the size again in just a second, this can hit a combined cycle of up around 50 miles per gallon. It's like 47 around town, 60 on the highway in some cases, averages over 50. That's remarkably good for a full-size SUV, especially if you compare that to 10 or 15 years ago. Then the road tax is crazy as well, and here's a real-world comparison for you. This exact car has a road tax of £150 a year. That's crazy for an SUV that looks as good as this one does with that kind of premium quality interior. Compare that, for example, to my car, the Volkswagen Touareg V10. Now, of course, that is the total other end of the spectrum, as I was talking about, a high-performance, basically top-of-the-range Touareg. There were only two that were higher, and those were the R50 and, of course, the ultra-rare W12. I pay £580 a year for road tax. This Jaguar is £150. That is a colossal difference. Now, of course, there's a difference in performance as well, but in terms of a daily driver on the practicality alone, this Jag is very impressive. Fantastic fuel economy, great tax price, and even the used prices for a 2016-2017 model or so on Auto Trader, for example, are really good. You're looking at like 20,000 miles all the way up to 60 or 70,000 at most for about 25, 28 grand, a little bit more if you want to get a higher spec. And even on that complete opposite end of the spectrum with the crazy 550 horsepower SVR model, well, even that one from this generation is about 50 to 60,000 pounds here in the UK. Now, I'm sure that varies a lot based on country, be it in the States or in Europe or wherever, but of course this is where I'm reviewing the car, so those are the primary specs that I'm going to talk about. To me, that makes it a deeply impressive SUV. The fact that you can have so much variation. On the one end, this Celine S7 level of power with fantastic acceleration, and then on the other end, a brilliant fuel economy, excellent tax bracket kind of SUV, which, and this brings me back to some of my other favourite points about that initial design, it's not obscenely big either. Despite being large enough to have good enough space for somebody like me who is 6'3", I need the headroom, I need the legroom, the width room, you could easily have, 2 adults, 3 kids in the back if you wanted to, tons of trunk space, or a Labrador in the back as the saying goes, but it's not ridiculously large. In fact, I believe it may even be smaller than something like a Discovery in comparison. So it's relatively modest, and by UK standards, if it's modest, well, certainly in somewhere like America, even more so. It's a car that manages to look great. In fact, again with some anecdotal evidence, far more people were looking at this car while I was driving it. Pedestrians, people in other cars that I could see looking at it and lingering on it, far more people did so than when I was driving the I-Pace. Even though the I-Pace is a more valuable, faster, more powerful, certainly more striking, I would say, and more futuristic car, but more people were looking at this one. To me, that's great, because it means you've got this great-looking, classy, proper Jaguar with a great-looking interior, great handling. Certainly, the weight is actually very good for an SUV as well. The curb weight is quoted at something like 2.3 tons. I believe the dry weight is like 1.8 or something. That seems like a pretty big disparity, but either way, the weight is very good for what it is. And it has performance which is, depending on the model you choose, more than capable enough to worry any of the established names, but also has fantastic fuel economy and tax and even used prices that a lot of those higher end models could never match. You're never going to find something like a Urus or a Bentayga for those kind of practical prices, and of course that's not the point, but that is my point. Get yourself, as the meme goes, a car that can do both. The F-Type really can. It can be the practical, affordable, daily. It can be the bonkers over-the-top performance. And to me, that makes me respect it quite a lot. And, to top it all off, the cherry on the cake if you will, we have of course the 2021 facelift coming as well. So the prices on these versions will get even better over time, because of course that's just the nature of having the newer model. So I would say that in terms of used values, of course it's not rock bottom yet. It's not going to be, it's not old enough, but it's already good value and it's only going to get better. So if you are looking for a really classy looking, very well made in terms of the look and the feel and the quality and the design, they've certainly put a lot of effort into it, and that shines through especially on a lower model, because of course everyone puts effort into the 50-60 grand car, but the 40, the 30, not so much usually. This one still looks and feels $1 million, and it's all the better for it. It gives you what you want from a Jag, but on a much more affordable budget, and it's a genuine daily driver. Overall then, well, as you can kind of tell, I believe it's an excellent choice, in fact, of SUV. And for all of the over-the-top futuristic awesomeness of the I-Pace and its all-electric wonder, even though it did make this F-Pace feel a little old-fashioned when I drove it after driving that fully electric 400 horsepower model, this one in its own way I believe is almost a more useful car. Because yes, the electric car is really cool, and in its category it would be my car of choice. This one, as far as SUVs go though, is kind of even stronger compared to the competition. Great value, great tax, great economy, and great performance if you want it as well, all wrapped into a nicely sized, practical, stylish, classy, all-round SUV with a ton of road presence, and I believe it lives up to what you would want a car bearing a Jaguar badge to do. Overall though, that's it for my thoughts on the F-Pace. Of course, give me your thoughts down below. Maybe you're just a fan of it. Either way, tell me down below. If you're an owner of any model in the F-Pace range, all the way up to the SVR, tell me about that down below. Do you love it? Maybe not so much in some cases, you never know. Give us your stories down below, and of course, stick around on the channel for more car reviews in future. And if you want to check out my review for the I-Pace, a number of other Jags as well, including F-Types and XKRs, and of course, far more cars as well, Maseratis, Porsches, Mercs, AMGs, all of these different models that I've talked about on the channel, then click here on screen to see those as well. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.